Just after dark on the 29th of January, 1991, the sand along the Saudi frontier begins to tremble under the weight of the Iraqi 5th Mechanized Division. Columns of T-55 and T-72 main battle tanks roll south with their headlights killed, and their main guns traversing, grinding through the border berms that were built to stop them cold. Within a few short hours, the coastal town of Khafji has fallen, its thin screen of defenders overrun. And the fourth largest army on the planet has done the one thing the coalition swore it never could. It has taken ground inside Saudi Arabia. The T-72 is the hard core of that thrust. Soviet-built, 125 millimeters of smoothbore cannon riding in the turret, layered steel and composite armor bolted across its face. It is a machine engineered to smash through NATO lines in the open country of Europe. And here in the Arabian dark, it advances with the calm of a weapon that has never met its match. Behind the vanguard grind the mechanized battalions, the armored personnel carriers, the towed guns already ranging the roads to the south. The Iraqi commanders have wagered that they can drag the coalition into a bloody close quarters brawl on ground of their own choosing. For a few hours, in the smoke and confusion of the Khafji streets, it looks as though the wager will pay. Overhead, the coalition hurls everything within reach at the intruding armor. An AC-130 gunship, call sign Spirit 03, drops low across the fighting to tear the Iraqi vehicles apart with its side-firing guns, orbiting in the slow, deliberate circle that makes it devastating, and at low altitude in daylight, desperately exposed. As the sky pales on the 31st of January, an Iraqi shoulder-fired missile climbs up out of the dark and finds it. The gunship falls into the Persian Gulf, with all 14 men aboard. The message written in that rising column of smoke is impossible to misread. Over this battlefield, the altitude is no sanctuary, and the enemy on the ground can kill the things that fly. This is the war the A-10 Thunderbolt II is about to inherit, and almost nobody in the halls of American air power wanted it anywhere near it. For 20 years, the establishment had treated the aircraft as an embarrassment to be quietly retired. It was subsonic in an age that worshipped speed. It was ungainly and slab-sided, built around a cannon instead of a sleek airframe, its two turbofan engines mounted high and awkward above the rear fuselage, its twin tail bolted on as though someone had run out of better ideas. The fast jet community sneered at it openly. Budget officers tried, again and again, to strike it from the rolls. More than once it was said, plainly and without shame, that the thing was simply too ugly to fly, a low and slow relic that would be swatted from the air the instant it met a modern battlefield. The men who flew it took the insult, wore it, and called the aircraft the Warthog because the name fit, and because they had stopped caring what the fast jet crowd thought. Now the Warthog is loitering over a killing ground that has just swallowed a gunship whole. The force waiting behind the Khafji raid dwarfs anything the West has faced in a generation. Iraq has crowded more than 4,000 tanks into the Kuwaiti theater, backed by thousands of armored carriers, thousands of artillery pieces, and an anti-aircraft network layered so densely that pilots begin to describe the skies over the front as a wall. Radar-guided missiles wait on their launch rails. Optically aimed guns wait beside them. Along the roads and in the desert beyond, mobile launchers hide among the vehicles they are sworn to protect. Every column of trucks might conceal a battery that can reach up and pull an aircraft down. This is not a broken enemy waiting to be finished. This is the largest concentration of armor the world has assembled since the Second World War, dug in and daring the coalition to come and dig it out. And at the center of that mass, held back from the border, sits the true villain of the peace, the Republican Guard, 3 heavy divisions, Tawakalna, Medina, and Hammurabi, the armored fist that Baghdad keeps in reserve for the decisive blow. Their T-72s are dug into revetments scraped out of the sand, hull down so that only the turrets show, protected by minefields, wire and trenches flooded with oil that can be set alight to blind attackers with smoke and flame. They have not been bled by weeks of bombing the way the frontline conscript units have. They are fresh, they are disciplined, and they are the formation every planner fears most. When the ground war comes, it is the Guard that will decide whether it lasts a week or a month or longer. And it is the Guard that will bleed the coalition if anyone gives it the chance. The plan to break that fist is built on a simple, merciless idea. Before a single coalition soldier crosses the line of departure, the armor waiting on the far side must be hunted down and killed from the air, one machine at a time, until the elite divisions are gutted and the conscripts are too shattered to fight. It is a task that demands an aircraft able to fly low, to find a single dug-in tank in a featureless desert, to loiter over the to be certain, and to survive the storm of fire that answers every pass. It demands, in other words, exactly the aircraft the Air Force spent 2 decades trying to throw away. Because underneath the ugliness, the Warthog is not a mistake. It is a scalpel shaped like a sledgehammer, and every graceless line on it was drawn for this precise war. The whole airframe is wrapped around a single weapon, a 7-barreled 30mm rotary cannon so large that the aircraft was quite literally designed backward from the gun. When it fires, it does not chatter. It moans, a deep tearing note as the barrels spin, and hurl a river of armor-piercing rounds tipped with dense depleted uranium, shells that do not simply strike a tank, but drill into it, sparking and burning as they punch through steel that was supposed to be impenetrable. The recoil alone is enough to slow the entire aircraft in the air. One good burst, a second or two of that terrible sound, can open a main battle tank from above, where its armor is thinnest, and leave it a burning hulk in the sand. Around the pilot sits a bathtub of titanium armor, a shell of metal thick enough to turn shrapnel, and small caliber fire that would kill the crew of any sleeker jet. The flight controls are doubled and tripled, so that a Warthog can be flown on cables alone when the hydraulics are shot away. The engines are set high and far apart so that one can burn and the other can still carry the aircraft home. The fuel tanks are lined to seal themselves when they are punctured. Every choice that made the aircraft ugly, the slab sides, the exposed engines, the stubby straight wing, hung with pylon after pylon, was a choice made in favor of one thing above all else. And that thing was survival over the exact battlefield now spread beneath it. Beneath those wings, the pylons carry the other half of the equation. Alongside bombs and rockets ride the electro-optical and infrared guided missiles that let a pilot lock onto the heat signature of an engine block or the hard edge of a turret from a standoff distance and send a warhead straight into it. In the daylight, the pilots hunt with their eyes and the gun. In the dark, they hunt with the infrared seekers, watching the desert bloom with the warm shapes of vehicles that their crews believed were hidden by the night. A tank that has run its engine, that has sat in the sun, that has fired its gun, glows in that unforgiving gray world like a lamp, and the Warthog is patient. It can stay. That patience is the thing the T-72 crews do not yet understand. A fast jet screams through in seconds and is gone, dropping its load on a coordinate and turning for home before the smoke clears. The Warthog does not leave. It circles at the edge of the range fans, low and unhurried, picking targets, rolling in, pulling off, coming back around for the next one and the next, until the revetment that held a company of armor holds only wreckage. It is built to live in the danger zone that other aircraft cross as quickly as they can. It is built to make that danger zone its home. By the third week of February 1991, the hunt over Kuwait has already been running for days. The Warthogs ranging out from their Saudi bases in pairs and flights, working the frontline divisions, learning the ground, marking the revetments, killing the guns that will shred the coalition assault if they are allowed to live. Every night the elite armor of the Republican Guard sits a little more exposed, a little more alone, as the units in front of it are hollowed out. The villain has not yet been struck at its heart. The armored fist is still clenched. But the clock is running now, and it is running toward a single, compressed, brutal window that history will remember by its length alone. 100 hours. That is all the time the ground war will take once it begins. And into that narrow span the reckoning between the ugly aircraft and the finest armor Baghdad can field is about to be crushed with a violence that will settle the argument forever. The line of departure is crossed in the gray hours before dawn on the 24th of February, 1991, and the desert that had waited in silence for 6 weeks comes apart all at once. Coalition armor pours north through breached berms and lanes cut in the minefields, and behind that steel the whole apparatus of the ground assault surges into Kuwait and southern Iraq, on a front that runs for hundreds of kilometers. The Republican Guard, held in reserve for exactly this moment, begins to move. The dug-in turrets that had shown only their tops for weeks now shift in their revetments, engines coughing to life. And the T-72s of the Tawakalna and Medina divisions wheel to meet the thrust, driving into their flank. This is the collision every planner feared. The armored fist, still clenched, still fresh, is finally swinging. And the moment those engines turn over, the ground beneath the Guard betrays it. A tank at rest in the cold desert is very nearly invisible to the seekers hunting overhead. Its steel gone to the same dead temperature as the sand around it. A tank with a running engine is a beacon. All along the northern horizon, as the Guard maneuvers to fight, hundreds of engine blocks flare into warmth, and in the cockpits of the Warthogs orbiting above, the featureless gray of the infrared world blooms with hard, bright shapes that had not been there an hour before. The very act of moving to the fight, the one thing the elite divisions had to do, lit them up like a city scene from altitude. The hunters do not have to find the armor anymore. The armor has stood up and announced itself. The pilots roll in. The first passes come down out of a sky still smeared with the smoke of burning oil fields. The Warthogs dropping low and steadying onto the long, dug-in rows of Iraqi steel. A pilot settles the pipper on the first turret in a revetment, holds it and squeezes, and the aircraft shudders as that terrible tearing moan pours out of its nose, and a stream of armor-piercing rounds, tipped with depleted uranium, hammers down into the thin roof armor of a main battle tank. The rounds do not glance away. They drill, sparking white-hot as they chew through steel that was engineered to stop a shell fired flat across a European plane, and they find the fuel and the ammunition stored inside, and the tank comes apart from within. A gout of flame punches the turret up off its ring and flips it into the sand. The Warthog is already climbing off the target and rolling for the next revetment before the wreck has finished burning. But this is no longer the broken front line. This is the Guard, and the Guard fires back. The desert floor lights up with the answer. Radar-guided systems buried among the columns snap awake and reach for the low, slow aircraft working overhead, and optically aimed guns pour tracer up in ropes and lattices of fire. And from the backs of vehicles hidden in the armored mass, shoulder-fired. Heat seekers leap into the sky, clawing for the hot exhaust of the turbofans. The air over the killing ground fills with the thing the fast jet community always swore would end the Warthog. A wall of steel and flame thrown up specifically to swat a low flyer from the air. Aircraft take hits. A round the size of a fist punches clean through a stabilizer and leaves daylight showing through the tail. Shrapnel rakes a fuselage and chews into the titanium bathtub around. A pilot who feels the whole airframe lurch and keeps flying anyway. This is the exact storm the aircraft was drawn to survive. And now, over the Guard, it is being asked to prove it in earnest. It proves it. A Warthog takes a heat seeker directly into one engine, and the turbofan tears itself to ruin in a flat concussion of fire, and the aircraft yaws hard and staggers, and the one engine set high and far across the spine from the other keeps turning, and the aircraft flies. Hydraulic lines are severed, and the fluid that should power the controls sprays out into the slipstream and is gone. And the pilot reaches for the manual reversion that lets the Warthog be flown on steel cables alone, muscling the crippled machine level by main strength and it answers. Cannon fire stitches across a wing and opens the fuel tank behind it, and the self-sealing liner closes the wound before the fuel can catch, and the aircraft does not explode. Warthogs come home over those 100 hours with hundreds of holes punched through them, with tails shot to lace, with hull panels gone and one engine dead, and the hydraulics bled dry, and they come home. The ugliness that the establishment mocked for 20 years is revealed, over the finest armor Baghdad can field, as the reason the pilots are alive to keep killing, and they keep killing. The tempo over the battlefield becomes something the T-72 crews have no framework to understand. They had trained against fast movers, the screaming jets that streak in on a single run and are gone before the dust settles. And against that threat there is a doctrine, a way to wait out the pass and survive it. There is no doctrine for the aircraft that does not leave. The Warthog rolls off one burning tank and banks around and comes back, and picks the next vehicle in the revetment, and fires and banks around again. It loiters at the edge of the range, low and unhurried, reading the ground, marking each hulk, working methodically down a dug-in column until the column is only smoke. A single flight of them can settle over an Iraqi armored battalion and simply stay, orbiting and striking, for as long as the fuel and the ammunition hold. And when the fuel and the ammunition run low, they hand the target to the next flight already inbound and turn for the tankers to drink and rearm and return. The killing does not pause. It runs day and it runs night. In the dark, the infrared seekers pick the warm armor out of the cold desert, as cleanly as the eye picks it out at noon. And the hunt that the Iraqis prayed the night, with shelter, goes on without interruption. The guard begins to break in ways its commanders cannot stop. Crews who feel the loitering death overhead do the one thing that guarantees their end, and abandon the tanks, scrambling out of the revetments and running into the open desert rather than burn inside the steel. And the armor that Baghdad staked the war on is left standing empty in its holes, a division reduced to parked machinery, columns that try to displace, to run north out of. The trap and save themselves only make the problem worse. Because a moving tank is a hot tank, and a hot tank is a target. And the roads out of Kuwait become corridors of burning vehicles, nose to tail, where the Warthogs and the rest of the coalition air caught the retreat in the open and closed it off. There is no maneuver that helps. Standing still, the armor is found and drilled from above where its roof is thin. Moving, it lights itself up and is hunted down. Fighting back, it throws up a wall of fire that the ugly aircraft simply endures and flies through. The elite divisions, fresh and disciplined and untouched by the weeks of bombing, discover that none of it matters against a machine built for no other purpose than to be here. Low and patient, in the one place every other aircraft wants to leave. The numbers that come out of those 4 days read like something from an older, larger war. Across the 100 hours of the ground campaign, the Warthog force tears the heart out of the Iraqi armored corps. And the tally of tanks killed by the aircraft the Air Force tried for 2 decades to retire climbs into the many hundreds, a share of the destruction so large that it settles permanently. The argument over whether the thing should ever have been built. Beside the tanks lie the armored personnel carriers gutted in their rows, the artillery pieces knocked from their trails, the trucks and the launchers and the supply columns caught on the roads and left burning. The aircraft that could not break Mach 1, that carried a cannon instead of a sleek silhouette, that every budget officer in a generation had tried to strike from the rolls, does more to dismantle the 4th largest army on Earth in 4 days than its critics believed it could do in a career. And the villain of the piece, the armored fist that Baghdad kept in reserve for the decisive blow, never lands the blow. The Tawakalna is shattered in place. The Medina is broken and burning. The Hammurabi, trying to save itself by running for the Iraqi border, is caught strung out along the highways north and hammered from the air until the road is a graveyard of steel. The three divisions that were meant to bleed the coalition for weeks, that were meant to drag the war into the long and costly close quarters, brawl the Iraqi command had gambled on at Khafji a month before, are wrecked before they can force the fight they wanted. The clenched fist opens over 4 short days, finger by burning finger. And the reserve that was supposed to decide the war decides nothing at all, except the speed of its own destruction. When the ceasefire comes and the guns fall silent over the desert, the ground tells the whole story without a word of narration. For kilometer after kilometer, the revetments hold only blackened hulks, turrets flipped and scattered. The roofs of the tanks peeled open where the rounds went in. The elite armor of a nation, reduced to cold and twisted iron, half buried in the sand. Above that ruin, the survivors of the Warthog force fly home to their Saudi bases. And they come in slow and battered and shot through. Some of them held in the air by a single engine and a fistful of cables, some of them trailing smoke, all of them ugly. And every one of them a rebuke to the 20 years of contempt that tried to ground them before this war could prove what they were. They had called it too ugly to fly. They had called it slow, obsolete, a relic that the first real battlefield would swat from the sky. And then the first real battlefield came, the largest concentration of armor assembled since the Second World War. The dug-in T-72s and the fresh Republican Guard and the wall of anti-aircraft fire that was supposed to be its grave. And the ugly aircraft went down into all of it and stayed. And when the 100 hours were spent, it was the finest armor Baghdad could field that lay burning in the sand, and the Warthog that flew home. The name that was meant as an insult became a badge. The lines that were mocked as graceless became the reason its pilots lived. And the argument that had followed the aircraft for a generation was answered, once and completely, by the 900 wrecks it left scattered across the desert floor.